Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, April 10th, 2024. Time for another show. Just preparing behind the scenes here and trying to get ready. And, wow, there's a lot happening. So it would appear 25 messages waiting in the queue from Greg Dworkin. So the Raft O Stories on its way down. I don't know what river does it come down? The river of, I don't know. Anyway, we need some sort of metaphorical river for that. You can all work on that one. And send me your suggestions now that you're not busy with the eclipse anymore, by the way. And, well, much to catch up on the things happening and not happening, whether they're not happening in Congress or happening or in some cases not happening in courtrooms around the country as TFG continues his litigation and prosecution tour. But that's nothing compared to the litigation and prosecution tour that he has in store for you should he get somehow find his way back into the White House, whether by election or otherwise. So keep on your toes. That's all I can say about that. And, well, let's see. Other stories to gather for the day. And, of course, there has to be something. Going like mad over to the salt water today to try to clear things up. But, it's not working all that great for some reason. We'll see how Greg's voice is doing with an extra day or two of rest. We got plenty to cover, so hopefully it's good and strong, but at the minimum, all of the stories are listed here, and so I can take up the slack if he's not quite back to 100%, or maybe wants to get back to just having a life again and not spending it all here. Although we enjoy talking to one another. I hope you enjoy the extra time that he's able to spend with us in the morning. It's a great thing. Plenty to catch up on. Like I said, some stories to double back on. More information still about the weirdo bond that isn't a bond. And I think we've kind of clarified things for everybody now. And I guess at this point, we know enough that we can stop calling it. We should stop referring to it, I guess, as a bond, because it isn't a bond. What after all, is the alleged bond company bound by in the paper that they said? That's now quickly become my favorite aspect of the whole escapade, which is that the paper that they gave, not only would it be insufficient as a bond if everything else was correct, but it's not a bond because it doesn't bind them to anything. The clause at the end of the paperwork that we read to you yesterday says that the company, Knight Insurance Company, basically says, yeah, by the way, we undertake to tell you that if you need to get paid, call Trump. That's not a bond. And we should stop referring to it as such. And I'm curious as to who's the trickster here, if it's one or the other or both. Is Knight pulling a fast one on Trump by taking a fee from him in exchange for a paper that says we won't pay, call Trump? Or is Trump pulling a fast one by saying, yeah, let's make a facially invalid bond and buy myself more time in delays? Are they fooling one another? Are they both stupid and neither one knows how to make the correct thing work? And I guess this really ends the myth of that I had, I had seen and passed on to you that this time, for this case, he had a good lawyer. And I couldn't remember the guy's name. And it was Todd something. But there are two lawyers on this one, I think. And one is Todd Blanche, and he was a former federal prosecutor. I thought this was one of the good ones, I guess. Every once in a while he managed to get a hold of a good lawyer, but as it turns out, he's a good lawyer turned bad, and, well, Trump knows a lot of those, but Trump causes a lot of those. Everything Trump touches dies, along with various other stupid ventures that never really should have seen the light of day anyway. Trump water, Trump steaks, what have you. There are people with valid and flourishing legal careers who just have them destroyed by agreeing to represent Trump. And I guess Todd Blanche is one of them. And in fact, there's a New York Times article dedicated entirely to that, which is interesting all by itself. Maybe we'll read through that, but I wanted to hint at it. We can probably parse through that later on. We have other news to cover, but it is Todd Blanche that it's about. And what was the other guy's name? Was it Clifford? I'm trying to remember. Clifford Roberts or something like that. That was the name that was mentioned in the article that we read yesterday, which got me all crossed up and confused about who was representing who. But maybe that's, is this the guy? Yeah, it's something quite like that anyway, because that's what came up in the Googling of Clifford Robert. At any rate, he's just really run through a number of previously capable lawyers and turned them into garbage. Chris Kai's among them. Alina Habba was never apparently a particularly good lawyer, but there are a number of them. And perhaps one day we'll go through the rogues gallery on that and see what Trump has cost the legal profession. Not to mention destroying, of course, the basics of the rule of law and the Constitution and all of the general precepts. That was something that Jack Smith spent some of his time doing over the last couple of days, filing with the Supreme Court in what may or may not be the last pass at the idea that Trump floats every time he runs out of other ideas, that I as the president, former president, future president, what have you, am immune from everything all the time, everywhere, and always. But I guess they're set to have their big showdown about that one. Jack Smith, as expected, taking the concept strictly to task, but so far it's just a sternly worded letter. At this point, we got to wait for the black robes to tell us what they think they need to do, or maybe their billionaires have to call them and tell them what they need to do. Strings need to be pulled, vacations need to be taken, RVs need to be awarded. So you can't know what's going to happen until you get can't follow the game unless you have the players. You can't do it without a program, and you can't do it without the bribe menu. That's the one thing we take away from Duke Cunningham, is one contribution to the discourse. All right, Greg Dworkin is here for his contribution to the discourse. Let's test the vocal cords and see how things are going. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning. So far so good.
All right.
I've lasted this long, and I'm really happy about it.
Yeah. You mean this sentence?
Yeah.
That was pretty good. It was excellent.
Okay, I'm done.
Clear as a bell. Okay.
So there's some important news that we have to catch up on that we haven't talked about.
Yes.
UConn men, of course, won the championship.
Oh, yeah, right. They do that basketball game.
Yeah, UConn women were in the semifinals with an absolute classic game that they lost to Iowa, and I think it was a better game than the Iowa-South Carolina championship, only because South Carolina was a dominant team.
Yes, that's what I heard about. They played a fantastic game over
there was this lovely article in the Washington Post about how the UConn men show how team basketball is better than individual star basketball, which is what Purdue had in the final.
Yes, that's true.
And I read it as, the men finally learned how to play like the women.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. And the good news is, having read about their team effort and rebuilding their team and keeping their team going, they'll be probably back again next year to do it again. They're not all just graduating.
Because when you put a program together,
I guess
that's what happens. Difference between the men and the women is the women all graduate.
Well, yes, and it's good for them. It's better in the long run, honestly, if you graduate. I think. I don't know.
And the women's game is just better. Anymore. It's just more fun to watch. But in any case, moving on.
Yes.
Other news is, you weren't here Monday.
Right.
And that's because there was a lot going on. But I think the important headline that people have really missed is that the moon's eclipse insurrection failed. and our media is just not covering the implications. I think it's really terrible. They're trying to both sides it.
Yeah, right. It's really incredible. At this point,
well, it didn't work,
please,
so it doesn't count.
I have the photos. Arrest the moon. Yeah, I guess so. Right. The moon claims immunity from immunity, I guess.
Immunity.
Oh,
right.
boy. All right, I quit. This is the end of the show, everybody. Forever. I'll see myself out. Okay.
It's the end of the millennium.
Well, It's near enough.
From Connecticut, we had like 92% totality. Yeah. It was pretty spectacular, I have to say, even though it only lasted for a few minutes.
Well, that's just eclipse for you.
The eclipse was an hour, but the totality part was only just a few minutes.
Right.
And then you saw this incredible gold rim around a crescent for the 8%. But the pictures of what the total eclipse looked like with the ring around it and then the diamond ring effect as the sunlight comes through was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, we didn't get to see that in the 2017 one, even though I saw the totality. The issue for this time around for some people, cloud cover, we had that in 2017. So I'll wait a couple hundred years, whatever. Right. Although if I go to Australia, apparently I'll get an early shot.
Right. We only had one set of glasses. We had bought them, whatever the last eclipse was, I can't remember.
17.
We had two pair, and one of them got lost, and my son didn't know where it was, and, didn't want to search his room because, you don't want to do that, even though he doesn't live here anymore. So, we had one pair that we passed around for all the eclipse watchers, and it was great. It was just absolutely wonderful.
Okay. Yeah.
As it got dark, all the birds just dived into the trees and went to sleep for like 2 minutes and then woke up again.
Power nap.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, that's
that was, all the important stuff.
Hmm.
The big news is Arizona.
Yes.
And it was pretty incredible. The Arizona Supreme Court, by a 4-3 ruling, 4-3, and remember, 2 of those 4 are up for re-election.
Yes, that's what I hear.
By a 4-3 ruling, they decided that a law that's on the books since before Arizona was a state takes effect, and there's just about a complete ban of abortions in the state of Arizona. And nobody saw that coming. Oh. And boom, there it is. And all of a sudden, this happens. And, my favorite comment from Daily Kos today was from a poster called Death by Salad. Who wrote this? Okay. Trump, abortion laws should be left to the states. Arizona, Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah, that was some timing.
What they're reading this morning, here's the headline. Arizona Republic, abortion ban is law. Huge font. Arizona Daily Star, court ruling makes nearly all abortion in Arizona illegal. And what happens? Abortion jumps to the center of Arizona's key 2024 races, says the New York Times. Washington Post, the Arizona Supreme Court just upended Trump's strategy. Mm-hmm. On Monday, Trump declined to support a national abortion ban, seeking to neutralize the political environment, and now that just fell apart. So the assumption was that somehow Trump had neutralized abortion.
Sure.
By coming out with this mealy-mouthed, weaselly, the state's law is the law of the land. Well, yeah, Arizona, for example.
Yeah.
Or Florida.
For 10 minutes.
Which had already happened. I mean, the idea that it was neutralized is so dumb. And what we're seeing is the news organizations are now really annoyed because they can't both sides it. They just can't.
Okay.
And they know it.
Yeah.
And they're saying it. And so this is the New York Times. Democrats quickly aim to capitalize on a ruling by the state's highest court upholding an 1864 law that bans nearly all abortions. Even though the court put its ruling on hold for now, President Biden and his campaign moved quickly to blame former President Trump for the loss of abortion rights, which they ought to because he's taking credit for it.
Yes.
Noting that he is taking credit for appointing the Supreme Court justices who overturned a constitutional right to abortion. Just a day earlier, Mr. Trump had sought to defang what has become a toxic issue for Republicans by saying abortion restrictions should be decided by the states. Mr. Trump offered no immediate response to the decision, but a spokeswoman for his campaign, Caroline Levitt, said President Trump could not have been more clear. These are the decisions for people of each state to make.
Yes.
Well, hello.
That lasted 15 seconds.
So what are other people writing? Oh, well, Arizona just went from a swing state to lean Dem.
Even though they're operating under the Ten Commandments.
This is the Washington Post, Dan Baltz. It took a little more than a day for Donald Trump's political gambit on abortion to come undone.
Well, yeah, it was bound to come undone.
On Monday, the former president declined to support any new national law setting limits on abortions, going against the views of many abortion opponents in his Republican Party. And this is all kayfabe. This is all wrestling fake stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Because Trump would sign any ban that landed in his lap if he were president.
He'll sign anything that lands in his lap.
And the news organizations are scrambling to try to pretend that somehow or other he succeeded in making abortion a non-issue, because they've been claiming since Dobbs that it's losing its salience every day, and it never does.
Yeah,
it never does. Every single time it's on the ballot, abortion opponents get clobbered, and it still hasn't sunk in. So somehow or other, a mealy-mouthed statement by Trump was supposed to defang the issue, or at least, as the Post put it, or at least muddy a galvanizing issue that has fueled Democratic victories for nearly 2 years. Hello?
Yeah.
Read your own damn writing.
Yeah, and, just learn the lesson of the Trump era. Everything he does is relatively insubstantive vaporware and will melt away, and this too.
Right, and then the next statement. He hoped to keep it mostly out of the conversation ahead of the November elections.
Oh.
What?
I bet he did. He hoped that, but as you know, that's not a plan.
As if this were a reasonable strategy that had a chance of working. What are you doing?
Oh, I don't know. It was
a
hope.
On Tuesday, the Arizona Supreme Court showed just how difficult it will be to do that. The court resurrected a 1964 law that bans nearly all abortions except to save the life of the mother. The law also imposes penalties on abortion providers. I think you get 5 years. Trump said, let the state handle the issue. The Arizona court showed the full implications of that states' rights strategy. As if that weren't clear after Florida. This just makes it worse, but Arizona, of course, is a swing state, so it matters there.
Yeah.
And so, stung by their inability to both sides the issues, the news organizations are scrambling how to, put this into the public eye without taking a position. And so the New York Times comes up with, Arizona ruling spurs strong reaction, but election impact is unclear.
Oh, well, we haven't had the election.
Battleground state said they would still vote for former President Trump even if they were frustrated by the reversal of abortion rights. How many is some? We have a clue because in the 2022 exit polls, 62% of voters in the state backed making abortion legal, 35% wanted it to be illegal, but only 5%, let me repeat that, only 5% supported a ban on abortion in all cases, which is pretty much what Arizona just did.
Yeah. I guess
so we know what the answer
live in
is.
Arizona.
The election implications are unclear. That's the thing you say before every one of these referenda come up and the anti-abortion side gets clobbered. Oh, we didn't see it coming.
We're looking away. We didn't want to look. We didn't have enough glasses between the three of us. Yeah.
But it's so clear what they're doing here, and they're struggling with it because if they actually reported honestly what's going on here, they'd be taking sides.
Well, it would look like that, or it would look like that to them.
It would
appear
to them.
They don't know how to handle that.
It would appear to them that they were taking sides.
Objective truth. What am I going to do?
Yeah, you can't do that. You have to find something. Well, some think otherwise.
Oh. Well, we just don't know how many, and it's unclear whether they'll tell us.
Yeah, counting, numbers. What are they?
All right.
Let's just send a reporter to collect anecdotes because then we can write whatever we want to write and, justify it by the fact that we talked to somebody who said that.
Yeah. Plus, you can eat.
Are you accusing us of not being accurate in our reporting?
I went to a diner. What else do you want? Look, here's the receipt.
I accurately reported what they told me. What do you want from me?
Right. That's the job.
Well, we want your editors to know what's going on here. Kyle Griffin brings up a really interesting point here, though.
All right.
Context. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, who says she won't prosecute women or doctors under the 1864 abortion ban, won her 2022 election, she's a Democrat, by just 280 votes.
Ooh.
The person she beat, you may recall his name, is a fellow named Abe Hamadah. He's famous because he contested the election like over and over and over and over and over and kept losing. It was like 5-6 times he did this.
Although at least at 280 votes, you can understand it a lot better than the other guy.
It wouldn't have mattered if it was 280,000. He would have done the same thing.
I mean, you lose, but Yeah, that's true. And Republicans are used to doing it. But this one has good cover. Okay, very close election, but you lost.
So, a couple of implications here. First of all, every vote matters.
All 280.
My vote doesn't get. Yeah, look at this one.
Well, yeah. Bring 279 friends with you.
Right. If you're too young to remember 2000, look at this.
Yes. What? Oh my God.
That's number
true.
one. Number two,
that will happen.
The fact that she won't enforce it is good because it gives women some time between now and November to deal with life.
Yeah, although you might have to. You might be in danger for 150 years, apparently.
But the ballot will be on the election agenda in November, and in fact, the people who are collecting signatures say that they've already got enough. They've already collected the 384,000 valid signatures needed by July 4th, and they're aiming to hit 800,000.
Okay. So they're on track to get their issue on the ballot.
Yeah. And so
Unlike
if that
certain
issue's on
other
the ballot, it favors bringing out Democrats to the polls.
Yeah. By the way, under the current Arizona law, I'm closing all the businesses that don't have spittoons in them, as was mandated by the same session that set what's now the current abortion law there.
Right. I mean, these judges are nuts. I don't understand what they're thinking.
Well, yes, you do. It's not, you wouldn't recognize it as thinking necessarily, but.
No, I don't. I really don't understand it.
This is what I want.
Something which I know is incredibly unpopolar. Only 5% of the voters want it. We know that from the exit polls. And by the way, I'm up for re-election.
Yes. Well.
Tell me what they're thinking. What are they thinking?
That's, I don't know. Well, they live in Arizona. Maybe retirement is permanently on your mind in Arizona, no matter how old you are.
So this is from an AP story. An Arizona court ruling makes nearly all abortions illegal. To give you an idea how it's playing. In a sign of Republicans' political bind, this is the AP, the neutral, storytellers here. In a sign of Republicans' political bind, even Carrie Lake, a staunch Trump ally and abortion opponent who's running for Senate in Arizona, said the total abortion ban is out of step with Arizonans.
Unless, she was somewhere else and said it wasn't.
Well, it's a shift from 2 years ago when she said the 1860 law was good.
So, I mean, that's interesting, too, just that whole observation of this isn't a surprise to people. People knew that that's what things would revert to. I mean, they had to have seen it coming with it going to the state Supreme Court. But, when they were asked about it, what do you think about this crazy idea of going back to the 1860s? Awesome. Hugely unpopular, and you're running for whatever the hell she's running for now.
Senate.
Although I'm not actually
sure you
bad.
Can hold Senate and governor at the same time, but that's still to be adjudicated.
Right. In the 1860s, you could.
Well, it wasn't a state, so it wasn't the governor.
Well, that's my favorite part about the leave it to the states thing. But if you don't get the answer you want from the states, you could leave it to any other entity you want.
Right. Leave it to the not states.
Yeah. Leave it to the states. This wasn't a state. Well, leave it to them anyway. That's the point is they made a good decision. I like it. So we'll keep that one.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually don't like it, and it's terrible. Thank you.
Last week, says the AP, the Florida Supreme Court made a decision with similar implications. Hello, everybody forgot about that? All of a sudden, Trump had a chance to make this a non-issue. What, Florida just disappeared?
Well, yeah.
I mean,
the memory of a flea.
Of course it's an issue. It's been an issue. It's going to be an issue. Dobbs has not gone away. And so, I know it's brought out Democrats in every election since, but maybe this will be the one where it doesn't, because I spoke to unnamed Republican male consultants who said it's losing its saliency. So I'm going to print that because I want to be fair to both sides.
By the way, the unnamed Republican, Abraham Lincoln, because that's who was president at the time. I had no idea.
This is a May 6, 2022 poll from Pew. America's abortion quandary. A majority of Americans say abortion should be legal in all or most cases, but many are open to restrictions. But not like this. When you look at the numbers, only 8% want it to be illegal in all cases, no exceptions.
Right. That's about
and that's about the 5% they got in Arizona.
Yeah. They found another 3 people.
Well,
for that
probably
they were
from then until now, it probably has dropped to 5% because now that people are seeing the actual implications.
Oh, yeah, right. Maybe the 3% difference is Carrie Lake. Oh, wait a minute. I'm against this. I just realized. So
anyway, so I think,
Could be.
That's so clearly going to be dominating the news. People are quite upset about it. And yes, they're going to come out and vote in November. And yes, it matters. And, the whole concept that this was all going to go away and we have to turn to other things that people really care about. What?
Yeah, I mean, there are things. Just Yeah, and people will say, and also abortion.
People don't forget this.
Yeah, they can probably keep these two things in mind. Or, maybe even up to 6.
Well, women, they're so flighty. They can't really, keep two concepts in their head for a long time. That's why men have to run everything. Well,
right. Back in 1864, that's probably what they thought. Let's also have some slaves.
Yeah, let's talk about it in November.
Right. It was a confusing time in everyone's life, I guess. Okay.
Well, we got some other issues to talk about. We'll talk about it after the break.
Sure.
It's already 9:27.
Yeah, but it's only 9:27 and 22 seconds.
Yeah,
so
well, I think
more
I got
now.
Another 15 minutes.
Right. Well, okay. Good. Okay. Well, we'll test that, and we'll give you a break worth about 2 minutes, starting in 30 seconds or so. Although you could just stop now, and I'll talk all the way up to the break. But yeah, it was astonishing. Blotted out all other news, and of course the craziness of reverting all the way back to pre-statehood, some 50 years pre-statehood. And I think there were like 7 people in the territory, and they were all in the legislature, I guess, because I don't know. It's very unclear.
Because they thought it was New Hampshire.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg's still going. We're going to give us another try, see how long it lasts, and work our way back up to full-length appearance, which is to say twice the length that anybody ever actually agreed to do.
Yeah, well, you know. I'm not done talking here.
Yeah, okay. So we've got more to do. Let's do it. What else is new?
G. Elliott Morris, who runs 538 these days.
Okay.
Tweeted, when was it? Yesterday morning. Biden is now about even with Trump in national polls.
Okay.
And the swing state averages are well within the uncertainty intervals from potential poll bias.
Okay. So we don't know what's going to happen?
Some of the state polls are kind of silly. Like when national organizations find that Biden is behind in Pennsylvania, but ahead in Michigan and Wisconsin, you look at this and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Pennsylvania is probably the strongest state of the three. How do we know? Because local polls, that is Susquehanna, F&M, people that just poll Pennsylvania, find Biden doing quite well there. And so that's the one to believe. Is it all too early? Sure. This is all about narrative. It's not about
I don't
prediction.
believe anybody then. Yeah. Okay.
But what he says is, are
Let's
some people going to admit their, quote, Biden is doomed, just look at the polls, he should step down, unquote, takes were perhaps premature? Bill Kristol, I'm looking at you, but a whole bunch of other people. And the answer, of course, is no, because they never admit they were wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they would admit that they were wrong on anything. So why this?
Yeah, why that? I think a really important story that's forcing itself back into the public awareness, at least, is Mike Johnson and his awful speakership skills.
Yeah,
He's got a couple of issues coming up. The House, you may recall, on its second attempt, was able to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
Yes.
You probably don't remember because it didn't matter. It was all political theater.
Well, we remember.
But it's going to the Senate now. At least it will when Mike Johnson walks it over, which he decided not to do this week, but he's going to do next week. Because Senate Republicans told him they have a better chance of making an issue of it if you don't do it this week, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on this week.
Interesting. Mind you, this is already, I think, 2 months old.
Yeah. I mean, who cares? I don't even think the public is aware of who Alejandro Mayorkas is.
Oh, that may be true.
Let alone that he's been impeached.
Yeah.
And Schumer's going to get rid of it as soon as it comes in. The question on the agenda there is, does he do it by tabling the motion or referring it back to committee? Or what legislative tool will he use to get rid of it? Or just vote it down altogether?
Yeah, that's still unanswered, but we got to see. I mean, they're counting votes, I assume, right now to
figure out what to do,
best.
which is whatever gets the most votes.
Yeah.
So while that's happening, and while the Joe Biden impeachment is completely floundering.
Yeah. Well, that hasn't even gotten to.
But the point is Mike Johnson's in charge of dealing with both of them.
Yes,
technically at least.
Right,
He's
for
speaker. Now. And even though somebody else may be in charge of the mechanics of it, it doesn't matter. He's speaker. It's his watch.
Sure.
So he's doing a lousy job on those points. Then he's got the Ukraine proposal to deal with.
Right.
And the way Punch Bowl puts it this morning is basically he has a stark choice. He can pass the Ukraine bill or he can remain speaker.
Okay.
But he can't do both.
I mean, I would pass the Ukraine bill.
That's
what
I would do,
I'm
too.
not him, and I don't care for him as speaker.
Right. So what
He
they
may
say
think differently. Yeah.
is that Marjorie Taylor Greene is getting serious about getting rid of him.
I have to get a grogger for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, all right.
And among Democrats, and it gives you the Republican orientation of Punch Bowl, and political playbook is the same. Among Democrats, the prevailing view is Johnson will eventually put the $95 billion Senate foreign aid package on the floor, pass it, and then with Democratic support remain speaker. We at Punch Bowl don't see that as viable because, how can that work? How can Johnson stay speaker with Democratic support? My reaction to that is, who freaking cares?
Oh, well,
It's not your responsibility to decide whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. Your reporters just report what's going on here.
Oh, yeah. Well, now we want them to just report. Oh, my God. I want them to give all right. Sometimes, yes.
But, this isn't a feasible plan, says Punch Bowl. How will Johnson raise money? How would Johnson rally Republicans to his side on any issue of the day? And again, I'm looking at this and saying, who freaking cares? Just do your freaking job.
I guess.
Get the important stuff done.
Yeah.
Well, this is part of your
job.
job.
Way to know.
Yeah, well, that's your problem, buddy.
I guess. There's no way to know. They shouldn't even. How will he? I don't know. It doesn't matter
let's see.
Great deal, really. But, I mean.
Why is it your responsibility to report on that in advance?
Are they not?
You're supposed to tell us what happened, not what could happen or what should happen.
Well, I like a little preview, but, I mean, just say, we don't know. I mean, that's an okay preview. And but how could he remain speaker with Democratic support? By doing that?
To illustrate the bind, House Republican leadership is in. Representative Scott Perry, Republican Pennsylvania, reiterated the long-held view among conservative hardliners that he'd only consent to consideration of a Ukraine funding bill if it were paired with H.R. 2, the stringent border security package Republicans passed a year ago, but that means effectively Perry can't accept any Ukraine bill. Well, yes.
Yeah.
Hello?
Right.
That's what we're dealing with here. So pass the Ukraine bill and deal with your speakership later. And if you wind up keeping it with Democratic support, then the implications of that are immense, but deal with that later. Because that's what Congress does. They do stuff and then they deal with whatever the implications are later. Or as they like to say, they kick the can down the road.
Yeah, well, that's what you do with cans if you find one on the road.
Yeah, but, the Punch Bowl people are really upset because some of their sources might leave.
Yeah, well, they're retiring. What can you do?
they're all retiring, and then these other guys might not talk. And what are we going to do? How can we exist day to day telling you this stuff is really crucial when in fact it really doesn't matter in the end?
I think normally the answer that works, I don't know. I don't understand why. AI. There you go. I don't know what, how, right. What. I don't know what it is. I don't know how.
We need an AI speaker.
Really? Why not?
Well, let's just have
What's
a
the difference?
Up there. What's the difference?
Sure. At this point, it couldn't make a difference. All right.
So here are the other two stories that I think are of interest to me. One, Trump hush money charges seen as serious by most voters, Reuters Ipsos finds. This is a Reuters Ipsos poll that's out this morning. The trial due to begin this coming Monday. Remember, the 15th is Monday. Your taxes, Monday.
Oops.
The trial due to begin this coming Monday is the first of 4 criminal prosecutions of Trump, the Republican challenger to Democratic Joe Biden, in a November election. In case you were unaware, Reuters helpfully tells you.
Yeah.
The other 3 cases, say legal experts, are considerably more serious, but
what?
Reuters Ipsos polling showed any criminal conviction could take a heavy toll on Trump, who is locked in a tight race with Biden. As we know, they're tied. Trump is not ahead. Trump is the first current or former U.S. president to face criminal charges. Roughly 4 in 10 Republican respondents considered the hush money charges to be serious, as did 2/3 of independents. So I just want to point out, for those of you saying, well, this isn't the one that matters, they all matter. Everything matters.
That is true.
And the fact that Trump tried at the last minute to get the trial stayed for various and sundry reasons, the appellate court gave him a 1-sentence answer. Nah.
No.
We're not doing that.
So one word, 1 sentence.
So I think the only card Trump has left is the classic, well, if you don't grant my stay, I'm firing all my lawyers, and then I'm going to tell you that you have to give me an extension because I don't have any lawyers.
That could work.
No, it won't work, because the court will say that you can't fire him.
All right. Maybe. I don't know. Well, what if the Supreme Court says it could work? In 1864.
They're not going to do that. It's a state case.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's unlikely to. I guess he's kind of exhausted his options, although I'd love to see him try that one. That'd be terrific. I fired all my lawyers. You have to give me a stay. Nope, no stay.
But I mean, that is one of the classic, I throw myself on the mercy of the court because I'm an orphan.
Yes.
Yes, but you just killed your parents.
Right.
That's not the point. The point is I'm an orphan now.
Yeah, all right. Well, I guess anything
my lawyers are terrible, and they haven't gotten the stay I wanted, so I fired them all. I'm firing you too, Judge.
Yeah.
I'm firing this whole case. You're fired, all of you. And the court's going to say, no.
Anything could happen.
We'll see you in court on Monday.
Yeah, his parents, of course, are already dead. He kills all his children and then says he's an orphan. Like, that's possible. But that wouldn't make you an orphan. You're not an orphan, you're just a murderer.
Now, the other story that I thought was really interesting, that's a little under the radar here, is this one is the Bulwark, Mark Caputo reporting. MAGA takes aim at RFK Jr. They're calling him radical effing Kennedy.
All right.
They turned on him overnight once they realized he'd be a threat to Trump, not just to Biden. Now, you have to remember, RFK Jr.'s campaign advisor said, our major goal is to make sure Biden is not elected. In other words, they're admitting that this is a Republican operation to try to screw up with the election. It's not going to work. Third parties fade, and he'll fade too. But it's really interesting that polling is showing that he's taking as much from Trump as Biden. They don't like that. Now, all of a sudden, they're really angry with him. And he's a radical leftist, and you can't vote. You created him, guys.
Oops.
Oops is right.
Well, let's see if you can get rid of him. If you created him, you should be able to. I think that, how does that usually go in storylines in classic literature? Create a monster.
Sorcerer's Apprentice, I think.
Yeah, and you just say, I created it, so I can turn it off.
I brought him here. I can get rid of him. Wait, it's not working.
No? Well.
I better break up the broom into little tiny pieces. That'll work.
Well, joining us now to report on this, our new correspondent, Dr. Frankenstein. We figured we'd bring in
Mickey's going to report.
We'll bring in an actual expert on this.
Apprentice Mickey had an idea. He was going to enchant the broom, and the broom was going to do all his work for him.
Well, that's like AI a little bit.
Yeah.
if you think about it. And it used an awful lot of water. Just like AI.
So now these are things that RFK has said lately. Vaccine mandates are a form of Nazism. Joe Biden is a threat to democracy. The January 6th prosecutions might be politically motivated. RFK Jr.'s beliefs, or we should start calling him radical effing Kennedy's beliefs and campaign trail rhetoric, has so much appeal to MAGA voters that Donald Trump and his top political supporters are starting to take steps to ensure the Democrat turned independent doesn't stray too far into the Republicans' lane. In a close election, it could be decided at the margins. A candidate who loses fewer votes to Kennedy in 6 swing states looks likeliest to win the White House. Of course, that's how it looks at the moment, but that's not necessarily how it's going to finish. So, the article goes on to say, one of the funny things about the Republicans is that they're always confident to the point of arrogance, even when they're just completely wrong.
Yes.
And so this is one of those things with the RFK that they think, this is a good idea. We're confident that this is going to help. Well, maybe it's not. Well, meanwhile, NBC News reports Biden is building a behemoth of a campaign. Trump at this point seems to be playing catch-up. Yeah, he is claiming that he raised $50 million the other day in a fundraiser, which, I think he's claiming that because Biden raised $25 million.
I see.
Whether he gets it in terms of pledges or future donations, nobody knows. The point is nobody should take Trump at his word because he's a proven liar. So he'll have to show with filings to the election committee that the commission that this is actually true. But even if it is true, he's still trailing a lot.
Yes, and by the way, even if it's not true, he could still file it and say that it is. And
right, a chunk of pro-Trump fundraising goes for legal fees. Next week, his first criminal trial is set to begin. A reminder, by the way, his first criminal trial is set to begin next week.
Yes. By the way, do you know what the charges are in this criminal trial that's starting next week?
Fraud.
Back to basics. Fraud with what in particular? Of course, there was of course the hush money and the cover up, but the crime that's charged
is rigging the election.
Yeah, but the crime charged is falsifying his FEC reports.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's now needs to show that he's raising more money than Biden, and the question is whether or not he should, falsify some FEC reports. So why not? Why not give it a try? Yes, it has landed me on trial, but I don't believe this trial is going to start. I'm going to dismiss the charges against myself, something, yada, yada. We'll see.
Right. Both camps say they're confident about their prospects, even as their allies on the ground are more guarded. But, the fact is Biden is actually investing in the states and Trump is spending all the money on legal fees.
Yes, and it's not just it never was his money. He's stealing money that Republican organizations in the states were counting on to build their election campaign.
Well, too bad for you. Arizona, you couldn't possibly think of anything to use the money for, could you?
I don't think so. And besides which,
nothing's going on there, right?
Yeah. Well, you could. Can they use Confederate script to pay for it now legally?
Why not?
Possibly true.
Trump dollars.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's true too. Yeah. What didn't everybody get 200 of those in the mail at some point? No.
Something
yes.
Like that.
No. I can't remember. A card. Something.
And it just again, because this is under the radar, I thought I'd bring this to your attention. Mark Jacob reports former White House photographer David Hugh McKennerly used to work for Gerald Ford. Resigned from the Gerald Ford Foundation board because it refused to give an award to Liz Cheney. Kennerly says the board was afraid if it honored Liz Cheney for her, protecting democracy stuff,
they would all be murdered.
And then Trump got elected, he would revoke the foundation's tax-exempt status.
And he might.
He might. So they're afraid, and so they backed off. Just to give you an idea of how Republicans think.
That is interesting. It's pretty wimpy. And, Gerald Ford is dead. It wouldn't matter that great deal, but I guess people get paid by the Gerald Ford Foundation, and they were worried that they would be paid less if they had to pay taxes like everybody else. They pay taxes on their income, yes, but not the foundation itself. And, of course, think, just for a moment, I know we want to come down on them. They're Republicans, and we want to hit them where it hurts. But think for just a moment about how many people's lives really do revolve around the Gerald Ford Foundation, and you can see the sense in their decision. It's a part of everyone's everyday life.
Right. Anyway, so that's the story. That's I'm done.
Okay, that's great. The whole foundation fell down the stairs just a minute ago, by the way. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that. But
well, when you think of Gerald Ford, you think of that with Chevy Chase's stuff. But I actually think about the Tom Brokaw satire that Saturday Night Live did. Mm-hmm. Brokaw wants to go on vacation, so he records the demise of Gerald Ford.
Yes, right. Eaten by wolves.
Classic. If you haven't seen it, go look for it.
What? That's crazy.
Gerald Ford is dead.
It was a pretty good one.
Well, okay. We'll do it again.
You're right. Definitely a classic. One of the all-time winners, in my view. All right. So you want to wind it up today and rest your voice on a pillow?
Here, just so you know, ex-Trump Organization CFO Alan Weisselberg has just been sentenced to 5 months in jail for lying under oath during Trump's civil fraud trial. They all lied.
Just now? Was that breaking news or?
Yeah, just now.
Okay. Oh, cool. All right, I'll go look for that one. And
he broke the news. Now it's not working.
Yeah, it never was.
You break it, you own it.
So what did he get? 5 months?
5 months.
It's the way it goes with these rich people and financial crimes. But okay, I'll read a little bit about it.
Well, he's old and it's Rikers, so good for him.
Yeah, I mean, look, 5 minutes in Rikers, you don't want to be there. You don't.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It'll be a tough run of it. And pretty soon you'll see him in court petitioning for a special exemption to get let out and just put an ankle monitor on me and let me go to Zabar's. And they'll probably get it too. Oh, wait. In the meantime, we concentrate on the big guy, and his trial starts on Monday, and doesn't look like anything can stop it at this point, and you never know, but good. All right, very good. Well done.
Fire himself. Yeah. I'm fired. I can't stand trial anymore because, you don't work here.
Yeah, well, he was never one of the lawyers, but still, I don't know. Who's representing him? I don't know. We'll read the article. Appreciate the lead. Let's see. Is that in the list at this point? Did you just see it, or did you just see it on social media that it's breaking?
What?
The Weisselberg.
Oh, it's the very last.
There. Okay. Kyle Griffin. Okay.
Yeah, the one you claimed you saw, according to the little icon.
It says I saw that? All right. Well, I don't know. It exists, and I can see it.
You didn't click on it.
No. All right. So here we go. All right. Yeah, it's just breaking news. No one has written it up yet. They're still at the courthouse absorbing the news.
Yeah, it's 2 minutes old.
Okay. Right. So his sentence.
I don't want to pretend we're real reporters. Kyle Griffin broke the news, but I just want to tell you about it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Everyone loves to hear that Alan Weisselberg is going to jail. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to start any day. Maybe we should,
again, the important things here, yes, eventually you do go to jail. And by the way, this is affirmed by the courts that they lie about everything.
Yes. That's what this means. You lie so badly that you got to go to jail for 5 months.
Yep.
Okay. I'm willing to accept that as a starting point, and it's going to be pretty rough for him. All right. Cool.
All right, take care.
Well done.
We'll
Good
try
job.
to do it again tomorrow. Yeah. Maybe we'll last till 9:55.
Maybe this is a pretty good workout, I think. Okay, good job.
Yeah. We'll see what the effects are afterwards.
Yes,
it felt good at the time, but an hour later.
Right. You gotta go soak it. What do you do? Go in an ice bath and something. You just dunk your head in an ice bath.
My throat.
Yeah. How do you do that? All right. We'll go drink some iced tea or something. Maybe that'll help. Who knows? All right.
Take care. Talk to you tomorrow.
Very good, and well done, and let's...
Oh, by the way, there's a criminal trial next week. Did I mention that?
Yes. Trump? Is it got anyone important involved in it?
Trump, and it's Monday.
Okay, so Monday, yes, Trump, not that important, but he is there. I saw them, by the way, circulate his silhouette up against as the eclipse the other day. I thought it was remarkable that they would do that. It looked horrible. And the only guy whose eyebrows have its own profile. I thought that was
he isn't looking well. And by the way, there's a lot of things circulating about clips listening to him absolutely be incoherent, substituting words, not making any sense whatsoever. Media really needs to play a whole lot more of that.
All right. I'm happy to do it. If we get the audio for it, we can do it.
I'll sit it.
We'll see if we get in
trouble.
Take care. Okay. Very good. See you tomorrow. And moving on, as they say, we make a little beep noise and push on to the rest of the show. Let's see. Where to jump back in here at this point? Well, I said I would start on the story of the good lawyer that Trump hired who had it all collapse on him. And it'll take us a while to read through that, so why not start that before the break? We'll see if it carries us over into the other side. But this is the story of Todd Blanche, the guy whose name I was grasping for on yesterday's show. Trump's trial lawyer gambled a gilded Manhattan career to represent him. The New York Times puts it in their headline, and this is just a couple of days ago, April 4th. And I guess things hadn't gone all the way south with the non-bond bond yet, although we knew that it was in trouble. The subheader here, Todd Blanche was a prosecutor and worked for a prestigious firm. Now he sucks. Now he is the principal lawyer for Donald Trump as he becomes the first former president to face prosecution. That's sort of like a historical setup and everything, but the real thrust of the story is he was once good. Now he's got a client who's so bad, he's making him bad too. Maggie Haberman is in on the action on this one, along with Ben Protis and Alan Feuer. So top Trump whisperer headlines here. Could be a major disappointment as a result, but let's listen. Just over a year ago, Todd Blanche was a registered New York Democrat and a partner at Wall Street's oldest law firm, which means he probably wasn't that firm a Democrat. But anyway, where the nation's corporate elite go for legal help. Now, to show you his commitment to the whole thing, he is a registered Florida Republican who runs his own firm, i.e. his firm, the prestigious one, said, "You're representing who? Not here, you're not." So now he's a registered Florida Republican who runs his own firm where the biggest client doesn't pay his bills. Oh, I'm sorry. I added that part. Where the biggest client is a man both famous and infamous for his legal troubles, Donald J. Trump. Mr. Blanche recently bought a home in Palm Beach County near Mr. Trump's Pervalago sex dungeon. He brought his family near Pervalago sex dungeon, which is extraordinary in itself, but he says he brought his family to Mr. Trump's campaign celebration there at the sex dungeon on Super Tuesday. And during Mr. Trump's first criminal trial, set to begin in Manhattan on April 15th, that's Monday, he will use space at 40 Wall Street, the former president's office tower near the courthouse. Keeps expenses low, I guess. After a well-credentialed career as a federal prosecutor and a white-collar defense lawyer, Mr. Blanche, 49, has bet his professional future on representing Mr. Trump, the first former U.S. president to be indicted. It was a striking career move, forfeiting a lucrative law firm partnership to represent a man notorious for cycling through lawyers and ignoring their bills that has baffled Mr. Blanche's former colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, and everywhere else, I'm sure. Many have privately questioned at social events and informal alumni gatherings why he would upend his life and risk his reputation for Mr. Trump, whose refusal to acknowledge his loss in the 2020 election has become a chasm in the U.S. political and legal systems. Many prominent lawyers have refused to represent the former president, they note, and 3 of Mr. Trump's former lawyers are now witnesses against him. Like, that's a pretty good reason not to do it right there. Mr. Blanche's decision to defend Mr. Trump in 3 of the former president's 4 criminal cases has pushed the lawyer outside his comfort zone. Why would you do that? He developed a reputation as a skilled courtroom prosecutor, working in the same office as Alvin L. Bragg, in fact, now the Manhattan District Attorney prosecuting Mr. Trump, but has far less experience at the defense table. Mr. Trump's Manhattan case will be only his 2nd criminal trial as a defense lawyer, and one of his few state court engagements. How interesting. Despite the risks, Mr. Blanche has much to gain from Mr. Trump. He no longer just another high-priced defense lawyer in a city full of them. Mr. Blanche is handling the country's most significant criminal case, raising his profile and creating a question about whether a door would open for him in a second Trump administration, or whether he goes to prison along with his client. I would add. He jokes about having his eye on an ambassadorship to Italy, friends say, although he often says he has no actual interest in a government job. Still, many assume he would welcome the chance to run his old office, the Southern District, a role that the agency's alumni covet. As the Manhattan trial draws near, some of his former Southern District colleagues have come to Mr. Blanche's defense, noting that every defendant, no matter how polarizing, is entitled to capable counsel. That's true. Nobody needs to defend that. It's just a question of, why don't you want to get paid? I have heard from a good number of people in the SDNY who have said, why the heck would Todd do this? Why would he ever take this case? Said Ellie Honig, the senior CNN legal analyst who worked with Mr. Blanche at the Southern District and speaks highly of him. My response is generally, when did we become pearl clutchers about defense lawyers defending defendants? We never did. It's not about the pearls. It's about himself. Like, why take a case for a guy who not only is a notorious loser, but is a notorious cheater and won't pay you? And when everything Trump touches dies? That's the real question. And also, why say, I'm a New York attorney and now I'm a Florida unemployed idiot? Like, what was the trajectory thinking there? I mean, okay, whatever. He thought for he was hoping for a different outcome, I'm sure. But that's stupid. That's the point. Well, anyway, that's what the job is, and that's what our system requires. That has nothing whatsoever to do with people's questions about why he did this. Mr. Blanche has his hands full. He's the lead counsel on both Trump's trial in Manhattan on charges that he covered up a sex scandal surrounding his 2016 presidential campaign, as well as the case in Fort Pierce, Florida, where he's charged under the Espionage Act. Don't forget that one. We'll return with more after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on with the story about Todd Blanche here. It's just good background, and see who's going to be doing the talking for Trump come Monday, April 15th. So let's see. We were in the middle of this paragraph when we left off, noting that he is lead counsel on both the New York Manhattan case, the Stormy Daniels cover-up money case, I guess is the best way to summarize that one, even though, as we pointed out earlier, the underlying charge here is that he falsified federal election campaign filings in order to cover up the payment of hush money to the porn star that he had an affair with, which ordinarily is a career ender for everybody involved, including the porn star, probably. I mean, I don't know if she was still working in the industry there, but I guess you're used to it at some point, right? Her co-stars would be like, well, if you had concerns about who else might have, filmed movies or had encounters with the people you're filming a story with, you'd be out of the business right away. It's not the line of work for you, but do you think they make any kind of exception? Like, ew, gross, Donald Trump, I don't really want to have anything to do. Well, it's not your fault, Stormy. Everyone still loves you. You're nice and whatever, and good at what you do, presumably. I don't know. It's not fair to hold it against her. So, I don't know. If by some chance the porn industry is full of considerate and thoughtful people, then I'm sure everything was just fine. I don't know. It creates problems. Anyway, still Donald Trump. The revulsion is thinking about Donald Trump just at all, much less involved in, I don't know, human activity. I don't want to think about it. Anyway, let's see. Where were we? Right. That Blanche is lead counsel on both that yucky case and also lead counsel in front of Aileen Cannon down in Florida. Is it Eileen or Aileen? I don't remember. Anyway, Eileen Cannon down in Florida, where he is charged, of course, under the Espionage Act for retaining sensitive government documents after he left office, to put it mildly. Mr. Blanche is also co-counsel in Trump's federal case in Washington on charges that he conspired to defraud the United States with his efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss. So the two Jack Smith managed trials, both Florida documents case and Washington insurrection case, Todd Blanche is of counsel in some way, co-counsel or lead counsel in all of those cases, plus the Manhattan Stormy Daniels case. So that's a lot to not get paid for. At the heart of his strategy used by Mr. Blanche and his colleagues on the Trump legal team is a favorite Trump tactic, stalling, including stalling payments to the lawyers, so watch out. The defense team has sought to delay the trials as long as possible, hoping to push them past Election Day, and Mr. Trump's associates privately say they see it working. In the case brought by the Manhattan District Attorney, the judge recently granted a 3-week delay, though he has rejected Mr. Blanche's efforts to postpone the case further. So maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, I don't know. Mr. Blanche, who was working on the Manhattan case with Susan Necheles, is that, how do you pronounce that? I don't know. Necheles. We haven't heard much about her. She, a veteran defense lawyer. Blanche is not a total newcomer to Trump's world. With the blessing of his former law firm, Cadwalader, is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. Mr. Blanche had in recent years represented other associates of the former president, including Paul Manafort, his one-time campaign chairman, and Boris Epstein, a roving advisor. That's an interesting way of putting it. But when he proposed taking on Mr. Trump himself, the Cadwalader Committee that handles reputational issues balked. Not unlike the rest of the porn industry, I guess. People with knowledge of the matter said, and none of the firm's leaders intervened on Mr. Blanche's behalf. A spokesman for the firm did not respond to a message-seeking comment, so that's basically, take your stuff, pack your belongings, put it in a box, get the F out of here. We don't want you anymore. Mr. Blanche described the experience to friends as painful and politicized, which I'm sure it was. But he told friends that he had been frustrated with a lack of autonomy at the huge firm and was ready to strike out on his own. And strike out he will. Last April, he founded Blanche Law in New York and began defending Mr. Trump himself, but then moved to Florida. His fees, like those of other Trump lawyers, have been paid, to the extent they have been paid, through Save America, the political action committee seeded with tens of millions of small dollar donations that Mr. Trump raised as he pushed false claims of widespread election fraud in November 2020 and after. The PAC paid Cadwalader roughly $420,000 when Mr. Blanche was representing Mr. Epstein, while Blanche Law has been paid just over $3 million since April of 2023, federal records show. So you might say, well, see, he is getting paid, so what are you talking about? And I say, yeah, I mean, it may be, but one, we don't know how much Blanche Law is billing Trump. We know that Trump claims that he's paid Blanche Law $3 million. So it may be, well, my bills are $6 million. Well, here's 3, which, nothing to sneeze at. Or, just keeping this in mind, I don't know why it would work this way for a guy who, had a high-powered legal career. I'm sure he's used to having a regular supply of money and would be unhappy not to have it. But he also clearly has gotten Trump brainworms, so it might be that he's just not thinking clearly. Keep this in mind. He has been paid just over $3 million. In fact, or why do we say this, reporters? The answer is he's been paid just over $3 million, federal records show. Again, what case is it that he's now currently most generally associated with representing Donald Trump in? He's representing him come Monday in a case in which it is alleged that Trump falsified his federal records. Specifically, these federal records of how much money was spent by whom and who got paid by it. He's accused of falsifying this. So what do we make of the fact that he's been, the federal records show that he's been paid $3 million? Question mark. let's just add to that. I know you say, well, okay, no, well, it's even then, granting that, right? The falsification isn't that that the record showed that someone was paid who hadn't been paid. In fact, if anything, the records show that someone was paid and then they covered up the reason and the person who got paid. That's the allegation. But falsification is falsification for one thing. And for another, I remind you, what other case is happening right there in New York where there's been, let's say, falsification of financial records involved? I mean, right as this is happening, across town, is it across town? I don't know. Where are the two courtrooms that they're handling? Where's the Letitia James prosecuted case happening versus the Alvin Bragg prosecuted case? Both happening in New York, probably in different courtrooms, but yet, at any rate, or courthouses. I'm not sure even. Maybe that's not even the case. I don't know. But at the same time that we're told, one, that he's going on trial for falsifying federal records, he's telling us, well, I paid my lawyer according to federal records. And by the way, just the other day, I was supposed to post a bond for $175 million, and I didn't. I posted a non-bond from a company that isn't registered in New York, and I don't have anything to show bond-wise. I've falsified that whole thing as well. I love falsifying records, especially about my obligation to give other people money or reports about money that I have already given them. So, was Todd Blanche paid $3 million? I don't know. You don't know. That I don't fault the New York Times people here. This is the normal outcome. This is the federal records say that. And if they're wrong, then somebody's going to be charged criminally around here. So normally you're entitled to write that. It's just odd that there's like no room for it, and maybe it's an unfair diversion and it's not founded with anything except my citation to this particular person's personal history of doing this over and over and over and over and over again and fooling the reporters along the way. But there you have it. Somewhere, maybe just one little paragraph in there that says, by the way, this whole trial is about his proclivity for falsifying federal records of the type that do allegedly show that over $3 million was paid to Blanche Law since April of 2023. Thank you. That's the end of my commentary on this point. Well, no one's job in Mr. Trump's world is ever safe, the article continues. Mr. Blanche is enjoying an extended honeymoon, developing a reputation in Mr. Trump's orbit for reading him well. He understands him as an idiot and treats him as such, I guess. Some of Mr. Blanche's friends said that they had perceived him to be a centrist law and order Democrat, whose politics were not so at odds with Mr. Trump that his transition to voting as a Republican was especially jarring. That's not really what we wanted to hear about, but okay. They describe him as deeply loyal to the people he cares about. Who? And a true believer in the notion that Mr. Trump should not face trial in the Manhattan case. That's interesting for the guy who's getting paid to go to trial with him. Mr. Blanche has a competitive streak. He has finished 2 full Ironman races. Wow. But that's an accomplishment, but has nothing to do with this. But by Trump lawyer standards, he is non-confrontational and soft-spoken. That's why I thought he was going to be one of the good ones. He also is uninterested in appearing on television, even though Mr. Trump often likes to see his lawyers on screen. Although Mr. Trump usually doesn't refer to Mr. Blanche as a fighter, one of his highest accolades, he does tell associates that his lawyer is smart and doing a good job. In recent court appearances, the two men have seemed almost chummy, whispering frequently to one another at the defense table. Mr. Blanche's decision to move to Florida, so that, by the way, seems to me an effort to get paid and keep getting paid. So, I don't know. Maybe it's working. Maybe it's not. It may be a sign of desperation. Like, if I'm not constantly in this guy's face, he's going to stop paying me. I don't know. There's no reason for him to be in Florida. Meet with his client a lot? Yeah, sure. But why not fly back and forth? He's a New York attorney, a high-powered New York attorney. He's founded Blanche Law in New York. Don't know what he's doing down in Florida all the time. And he's not getting anything out of meeting with Trump, believe me. Anyway, Mr. Blanche's decision to move to Florida reflected how fundamentally his representation of Mr. Trump has influenced not only Mr. Blanche's professional life, but his personal one. Mr. Blanche's wife, a doctor, has joined him in Florida, where he had for some time been looking to move for family reasons. What reasons are they? Don't know. And where he maximizes his time with a client who doesn't like being scheduled. He commutes to New York for trial matters. The website of Mr. Blanche's firm briefly listed its address as Mr. Trump's building at 40 Wall Street, where the former president has repeatedly held news conferences after court appearances. Two people close to Mr. Blanche, who were not authorized to discuss the situation publicly, said the space was a temporary war room. The address was removed from the firm's website after the New York Times asked the campaign about the arrangement. Interesting. Bruce Green, who teaches legal ethics at Fordham Law School in New York, said he didn't see a problem with Mr. Blanche's tight bond with Mr. Trump, although he did question whether it could affect the lawyer's judgment. That's fine. Lots of defendants don't trust their lawyers, but there's obviously a good relationship, Mr. Green said. Still, while it's important to have trust, it's also important to have a sense of detachment. If you drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, it could impair your willingness to tell a client hard truths. Many of the arguments that Mr. Blanche has raised on behalf of Mr. Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee for president, by the way, echoed the former president's own laments about his criminal cases. In filings and hearings, Mr. Blanche has painted a picture of the former president as the victim of partisan attacks from Democrats and has attacked the cases themselves as attempts to derail Trump's campaign for the White House. Even some seemingly casual phrases Mr. Blanche has woven into his court filings appear designed with the client's perspective in mind. In papers recently filed in the classified documents case, he referred offhandedly to Mr. Trump's, quote, first term in office, implying that there would be a second. At times, his rhetoric has irritated the judge overseeing the Manhattan criminal case. Just last week, the judge wrote in an order that while he welcomed zealous advocacy and creative lawyering, he also expected attorneys to demonstrate the proper respect and decorum that is owed to the courts. He'll be disappointed in that, of course. Sending a none-too-subtle shot across the bow, the judge reminded Mr. Blanche's team of his power to punish disobedience with criminal contempt. Yeah, right. The judge, Juan M. Merchan, is also lambasted Mr. Blanche in a courtroom full of reporters last week, rebuking him for not directly answering a question. Mr. Blanche apologized. Ooh, that's not going to look good in front of Trump. When Mr. Blanche accused the district attorney's office of prosecutorial misconduct, Justice Merchan questioned how long Mr. Blanche had worked as a prosecutor, implying that he should have known better than to have leveled that claim. Mr. Blanche joined the Southern District in 1999, not as a prosecutor, but as a paralegal. He worked days and went to Brooklyn Law School at night, commuting from Long Island. Mr. Blanche, who was married at 20 and a grandfather in his 40s, conveyed a decidedly middle-class vibe at an office known for its Ivy League pedigree. When he returned to the Southern District a few years later as a prosecutor, he focused largely on violent crime rather than the white-collar cases that prosecutors have parlayed into lucrative law firm jobs. Mr. Blanche ultimately became a co-leader of the Southern District's Violent Crimes Unit. As a violent crimes prosecutor, Mr. Blanche was responsible for handling a variety of unsavory cooperating witnesses, none of whom ever had to, say, post $175 million in bond, for instance, including drug dealers and murderers. That experience, his former colleague said, showed a contrarian streak and an empathetic side that explains his decision to simply put his career on the line for someone as divisive, or divisive, as some people say, as Mr. Trump. Sabrina Schroff, a longtime federal defender, recalled that as a prosecutor, Mr. Blanche had once dropped robbery charges against one of her clients after she demonstrated to him that the case should be dismissed. Wow, it should be dismissed, and he did dismiss it? That's crazy. It wouldn't have been easy to write my client off, she said, and he didn't. That is what an incredible story. One defense attorney who had good reason to get a case against her client dismissed, in fact, saw exactly that happen. Now, he could have said, screw you, but instead he said, oh, what the hell? What's the difference? You have good reason to believe that you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you could beat us in court. Fine, we'll drop the charge. It's really nothing to crow about, quite honestly. But okay, there is that. So, having read all the way through that profile, I think it's important to have because, of course, that's the trial starting on Monday. But it's still the case that I had everybody confused yesterday because the bond case or the non-bond case is what? That's the civil fraud case that was in front of Judge Engeron, and Blanche, I don't think, was on the team there. And I guess, is it, we were looking up Clifford Robert, is that one there? But we also, that does involve, I think, Judge Engeron's team, or the team in front of Engeron did involve Alina Habba and Chris Kais, right? It's difficult keeping them all straight. If I had a spreadsheet of some kind, we could do it. But anyway, I was just sort of reminded that wasn't there a good lawyer in there somewhere or something, and his name was Todd Blanche and something. Now, that doesn't mean that Blanche is doing a particularly good job either. We should be aware of that. As a matter of fact, let's see. There is, did I pocket this story? Because just yesterday, if you want to know how it's going in handling the case for Trump in the Manhattan District Attorney case for Blanche, the answer is that's not going so great either. I'll see if I can find a story on this because I guess I didn't put it aside. But there was word yesterday that the Trump legal team in that case was filing some other last-minute motions. I don't know whether it was part of the effort to try to delay the trial again, but it sounds like it certainly could be because part of their complaint was, well, we've subpoenaed potential witnesses that we think are going to be important to the trial, and they're not responding to the subpoena, so we can't start the trial because it's all screwed up. We're entitled to bring our witnesses and to bring our evidence, and nobody's responding to these subpoenas. Well, when you say nobody, who do you mean? Well, I mean this one guy in particular. And I can't remember the guy's name now, but maybe you saw the discussions about it on social media. Did I repeat it anywhere? I'm not even 100% sure that we did do that, but the guy, yeah, here it is. I think this is it. Yeah, so Joshua Friedman, the ubiquitous Joshua Friedman, as we say about him on Blue Sky, says that Trump's attorney for the upcoming criminal trial, Todd Blanche in this case, involved in this back and forth email that they filed as evidence of this particular subpoena target's flippant and dismissive approach to the subpoena that they figure, I guess, is grounds for some sort of delay in the trial. Here we are trying to subpoena this witness, and he refuses to produce the documents we want, and he refuses to appear, and he refuses to answer our questions. And the reason, as it turns out, is, well, here's the way Josh posted about it yesterday. Trump's attorney for the upcoming New York criminal trial says Exhibit C reflects the flippant and dismissive approach that Jeremy Rosenberg, who they're subpoenaing, took in response to the subpoena. And, well, you can have a look at the screenshot of this correspondence between the two of them here. But essentially letting him know via email, hey, you've been served with this subpoena. Give us all your files having to do with XYZ. And he says, I don't have any files for you. Sincerely, Jeremy. And then P.S., the phone number you provided is disconnected. So, by the way, Blanche because he's such a high-profile, high-power attorney that totally has a legit law firm. It has no office. It may or may not be in 40 Wall Street. It may or may not be paid for by the campaign. Nobody knows. Also, your phone number has been disconnected. You might be in Florida. You might be in New York. I don't know. Sounds totally legit. P.S. It says, P.P.S. I'm keeping the $15. Apparently, the $15 is witness travel expenses that would have been necessary to pay the expenses for this Jeremy Rosenberg, is it, to show up at trial to provide his testimony in addition to turning over these documents. The thing is, he says, I don't have any documents or files for you. Well, look how flippant and dismissive Rosenberg is. This is clearly cause for more delay, Your Honor. But there's an answer for that one. And apparently the DA said, yeah, you subpoenaed the wrong Jeremy Rosenberg. So, sorry. No wonder he doesn't have any files for you. And the DA actually filed some paperwork saying, look, we really could delay this and embarrass him even more for effect by simply saying, yeah, the guy doesn't have any files. What do you want me to do about it? No, we'll short circuit the whole thing. The reason he has no files is you didn't even make sure you subpoenaed the right guy. So this is on you. You want to delay the trial because you subpoenaed the wrong people and you didn't take care of business? No. It just means that you're not going to have your witnesses at trial because, as it turns out, whether you were a good lawyer once or not, you're a bad lawyer now. Not only do you work for Donald Trump, but he ate your brain. He gave you Donald Trump brainworms, and now you're performing at Alina Habba levels. That's the story that I wanted to tell with that one. Finally, made it worth your while to hear all this stuff about Todd Blanche. Why is it relevant? And the answer is because even when he hires good attorneys, they turn bad. Not just because they're representing a bad person, but they actually practice law poorly when they work for him. And it's almost impossible to avoid because he's asking you, that's the job. Please practice law poorly. Make motions that don't make any sense. Argue things that aren't things. That's what's going on. So in addition to the non-bond bond, we have that to add to the picture. All right, so let's see. There's a couple of other things that I thought I might share with you. This Substack entry from Jay Quo about the non-bond bond was of some interest and had a little something extra, as I recall, that we could add to the picture. The hanky-panky financing. The billionaire owner of the company behind Trump's questionable $175 million non-bond bond has some other shady connections. And a lot of this we will have heard before. And I think we can skip kind of down to the bottom of this because, let's see, there's the story of the background of posting the bond. There's the still very important ProPublica story gets mentioned in here that points out that during the proceedings before the Court of Appeals in New York, in which Trump's legal team is seeking to get the bond reduced from $450 or so million down to $175 million, saying it's impossible for us. Nobody will meet our needs here and put up a $450 bond, a $450 million bond. And of course, we found out in the middle of all that, Knight does contact Trump's team in some form. And it's still an open question. Who did he talk to? Who did he make this offer to? But allegedly, according to ProPublica, he did say, I'll do the $450 million. But Trump's legal team continues to tell the Court of Appeals, no one will do this. Now, it may be, as we mentioned yesterday, that they already know Knight is incapable of putting up a $450 million bond, but that only just makes them look worse by saying, well, in a couple days, we're going to turn around and do a $175 million bond, and they are not capable of doing that either. It may have come as a surprise to them that they couldn't do the 175, but given how many aspects of this non-bond bond have been screwed up to the definitional problem that they have with, is this a bond at all? It should have been more obvious. Not only could they not do the 450, but they probably couldn't do the 175 either. Anyway, as it turns out, Hanky has some other connections here that are of some interest, and I should have asked, and maybe we'll ask tomorrow when Greg returns. Greg was, I think, the first one to raise the red flag for us in reporting that he was reading about the Axos Bank or other whatever kind of financial institution it is, and they're meddling in Trump affairs. Well, there's a connection there too. I have to ask him, why did he bring that up in the first place? Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. By the way, I was just reminded that Greg had sent me a clip of an example of where the print media was busy cleaning up Donald Trump's words and turning word salad into, semi-coherent statements. Although I guess what I really need to find is where some print version of how did they describe what it was that he said. And I guess we could play you the original version. But it only takes about 20 seconds to get the garbled version of it. But I wonder if the print version is available somewhere of remarks that... Let's see, where is it that he's speaking here? Sioux Center, Iowa. Is that the building that he's in, or is there a Sioux Center as a municipality? Is it the Sioux Center in Sioux City? I don't know. It's sent out by Biden-Harris HQ, and I don't know whether it's contemporaneous with its broadcast or what. It was on the Right Side Broadcasting Network. I guess the only people that were covering the thing at Sioux Center, Iowa. Anyway, maybe I'll hold that in reserve and see if we can find the corresponding print coverage and see whether anybody bothered to try to clean that thing up, or whether it was just not covered in print at all because it was just some obscure rally. Anyway, back to Tim Kuo's description of what was going on in the non-bond situation. He mentions all of the things that we discussed yesterday and all the problems with the bond, including that it wasn't a bond, and of course the somewhat ridiculous situation, which is that we now have to wait until April 22nd to have a hearing about a bond that is late and was posted under fraudulent circumstances, or at least unclear circumstances. It's a document that says we cannot cover the amount of the bond, and we are not committing to pay anyway, so it's not a bond, and about 5 other things that were wrong with it. And this is the second time the deadline has run out, and still we have to wait 3 weeks to have a hearing about what will come next. And then it'll take 3 weeks to figure out what will come next. And then who knows how long it'll take before there's ever any action taken. Anyway, but Kuo also mentions a couple of other things after recounting all of the facts of the case. We have, he says, some further digging also revealed that the very arrangement between Knight Insurance and Trump is highly unusual. We know that much. It appears from the legal documents filed with the court that KSIC isn't really acting as a guarantor at all. More on that below. That's my favorite part of it. And then finally, in terms of the issues that he'll lay out in this Substack article, the identity of the heretofore unknown billionaire benefactor behind this lifeline, Don Henke Jr., has caused legal observers and follow the money trail types to sit up and take notice. Henke, it turns out, is deeply connected to another company that has thrown Trump a major financial lifeline. Major, every time major gets mentioned, financial lifeline. Today, which is to say, I don't know, a couple of days ago, Quo said, I'll start with the $175 million bond and explore why many remain skeptical over KSIC, the Knight Specialty Insurance Company, as a surety, and whether the bond itself is even any kind of guarantee. We know it's not. Then I'll zoom out and connect some of the dots between Henke and a bank you'll probably hear more of in the future, Axos. So first he goes on to tell the story that we told yesterday about how non-bondy this whole paper is. But he goes on. Let's see. He talks about excess line insurance and Ilani, the Excess Line Association of New York. Again, he's not registered with that. None of that really works out for Knight. And then, of course, the wording of the document that says, yeah, by the way, we're not going to pay. Trump is going to pay. So it's not a bond. So we definitely hit on that yesterday. Now, following the money, a bank called Axos. That's the section we're interested in. You might remember reading at some point, I definitely remember hearing, that Trump was pretty deep in debt and had a number of big payments coming due on his loans. So, who bailed Trump out of all those loans and helped him offload his flailing D.C. hotel property? Don't forget he did sell that. After all, once January 6th happened, Trump's lenders at Deutsche Bank came under intense scrutiny during the civil fraud case, and most banks wouldn't come near someone so radioactive. Trump and his extended family started courting and doing business with the Saudis. Think Jared Kushner, by the way. He's back in the news with this as well. And we're left wondering what domestic financial institutions might risk coming to Trump's aid. And speaking of having difficulty doing business in America with Americans, that's another of the major stories of the day. Jared Kushner and his wealth management fund, right? All started with a, $2 billion investment from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund and maybe a couple of other sovereign wealth funds, et cetera. Not only are they big boosters of his, as it turns out, and this is odd from somebody just leaving the White House as a top advisor to the President of the United States, has 0 American clients. Of all the people in all of the world who are trusting him with billions of dollars to invest, there's not a single American on the client roster, which is interesting because, that's chiefly where the influence of the top advisor to the White House really ordinarily would lie, which I guess was a lie because, as it turns out, his only interest, or maybe the only people who think he could get anything done, are all foreigners. And maybe it's just a practice that they got used to while he was in the White House. If we want an inside line to the President of the United States, Jared Kushner's the guy, and it's only going to cost us $2 billion to get it done. Interesting side story. We'll get to that later, perhaps later in the week. Now, anyway, so who would domestically come to the aid of Donald Trump in his hour of need when facing gigantic balloon payments on so many loans? There appears to be an answer. Don Henke Jr. isn't just the shadowy owner of non-bond issuer, KSIC, the Knight Specialty Insurance Company. He's also the largest individual shareholder in Axos, described here as an online bank, and that's in scare quotes. Together with Henke's KSIC, Axos has provided some $500 million in financing to Trump and his company. $225 million of that came in 2022, just as Trump's loans were coming due. So interesting. Maybe Hanke got used to the idea that, my night insurance companies hold plenty of money. Back in 22, I sent $225 million as part of a $500 million financing package to Trump. So I totally have the money. What? I used it all up and spent it in the past couple of years bailing out Trump? What happened? Where's all my cash? Okay. Anyway, that back in 22 was quite a lifeline, and it raises a big conflict of interest and influence peddling question. For that much money and with that kind of leverage, what kind of favors and access would the financiers expect? If the guy gets back in the White House, they've got him over a barrel, said Richard Painter, a former ethics lawyer for President George W. Bush. I guess that's a source. Told the Associated Press. And then there's further connection. As Rolling Stone reported back in 2022, right after a massive debt on the Trump Tower was unexpectedly refinanced by Axos for a cool $100 million, the Kushner family also deep in bed with that bank. And here, from the Rolling Stone article, the bank has financed at least 3 real estate transactions with Jared Kushner's family enterprise, Kushner Companies, in 2018. According to Bloomberg, the Kushners got a $57 million bridge loan for a risky New Jersey real estate development that was largely backed by Axos, which then I guess was doing business as, I don't know what this means, BOFI, but I'm sure somewhere earlier in the Rolling Stone article that is explained. The Kushner family dealt with Axos again that same year when the bank stepped in to take over the mortgage on a Brooklyn real estate deal that the Kushner company's credit arm had first financed to the tune of $30 million. Last year, the Kushner companies reportedly received $80 million in financing from Axos and the investment group Fortress to break ground on a development in South Florida. So, back to the J. Quo here. What do Axos and Hanke get out of all of this big risk financing? Per the AP's reporting, Axos itself already has quite the history of legal troubles. It was investigated under the Obama administration after a whistleblower filed a lawsuit accusing the bank of violating rules against, you'll never guess what, money laundering. Wow, that's weird. After Trump took office in 2017, as the most famous money launderer ever to become president of the United States, that investigation went away. Shocker. Hanke himself was investigated and forked over $48 million in penalties and compensation after Obama's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau found that his company had used illegal debt collection practices. Remember, he's in the subprime car loan business. Hanke made his money selling auto loans at very high interest rates to people with bad credit. And as we learned the other day, there's the article from Roger Sullenberger in the Daily Beast detailing how a large portion of his business was making those bad loans for car purchases by active duty U.S. service personnel and then illegally repossessing them while they were deployed overseas. So taking their money and then taking the car back on top of it all. The threads, there's more of this. Having a friendly administration willing to cut him and his company slack would be a huge benefit to Hanke and Axos. It already was in 2017, again, where the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau fined him $48 million. Well, that's been under attack and threatened with being shuttered in another Trump administration in the future. But they definitely put the collar on the CFPB during the last go-round with Trump at the head of the executive department. At any rate, having a president so leveraged and so dependent on outside financing would prove a tempting target for those seeking to influence policy, including our foreign dealings, or just the CFPB for that matter. The threads of this story, with Axos and the massive debt relief now linked to Hanke and the New York bond, which is in the bond, They're all intertwining in real time. Jay says, I have confidence that reporters will now dig ever more thoroughly into these companies and into Hanke. I don't know if I have as much confidence, but someone will. The reporting so far has already placed the $175 million bond, non-bond, filed by Trump into serious question, and it would not surprise me if other financial irregularities already exist between the Trumps, the Kushners, Axos, and Hanke. And it's a good alert. And I have a feeling you're right, that he's right, that we'll start to hear more and more. We'll be hearing more and more about this as time goes on these days. All right, let's see. There are a couple other things still related to that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, right. That's a different story. But then there's this one from Reuters, a report more about Hanke. This I thought was interesting. Ko-Gui King is the reporter here. Hopefully I've not mispronounced the name too terribly. But the headline reads, businessman behind Trump's New York bond, which isn't a bond, says he charged him a, quote, low fee. I know that's not a particularly interesting thing, but the rest of it kind of is. Don Hanke, the billionaire businessman whose company, Knight Specialty Insurance, provided the $175 million bond. I mean, and again, we need to get away from this. This is a April 5th article, so maybe they didn't quite know how bad it was just yet. But I mean, they didn't provide a $175 million bond. They just didn't. So we can stop saying that. But in the parlance of April 5th, it sounds like they want to say that he did. This being the bond that Donald Trump was supposed to have posted and didn't in his New York civil fraud case. Anyway, Don Hanke told Reuters that the fee his firm charged the former U.S. president was low. Hanke, who backed Trump as a presidential candidate in 2016 and has said he supports his reelection, has maintained that providing the bond was a business decision. Interesting all by itself. He declined to disclose the fee, but said it was low because Knight did not think there was much risk involved. And I mean, I guess all of these things you have to wonder, what are people even saying here? He's talking out of both sides of his mouth, right? There's always risk involved, of course, but there's particular risk when you're dealing with Donald Trump. But he's also correct, given that the bond, which isn't a bond, says right in it that it's not a bond. We're not going to pay. He's going to pay. Is that what he meant by no risk or low risk? I mean, I'd take a fee. All he did, essentially what he's done here is he's taken a fee of some percentage of the $175 million face value of the bond, and he says he gives an estimate for the range, which, by the way, doesn't match up numbers-wise with the speculation that the $185 million promissory note that he said he was holding in one of the other companies might have been from Trump. That was highly questionable, if it really was part of their December 31st financial statement anyway. But I digress. But he's saying, I mean, what he did was he gave the court papers saying, I'm not taking any responsibility. All I'm taking is a fee from Donald Trump. He's paying me a couple $1 million for nothing. That's actually a pretty good business decision, I guess, now that you think about it. It's dishonest, but, you know, what can I tell you? Lots of stuff is dishonest. Oh, well, womp womp, sad trombone. Hanke, as we say here, said he kept the fee low because Knight did not think there was much risk involved. And if you're not going to pay anything, there is none. Lawyers say surety companies typically charge a fee between 1% and 2% of the face value of the bond. Now, I'm not really clear on whether or not Knight really ever has any experience as a surety company in California. None in New York, obviously. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But I guess industry experts say, yeah, somewhere between 1 and 2% of the face value of the bond is the fee that you take. Now, the face value of the bond, remember, is, well, was ended up being $175,000. Now, he was offering a million. He was offering $450 million and probably thought he was going to get that fee. I don't know whether the fee is low based on the 450 figure or the 175. But if we go with $175 million, right? Well, let's see. 1% of that is $1,750,000. And of course, 2% twice that, about $3.5 million. But there's no particular reason to believe that he's adhering to the industry standard. He just says his fee is low. But remember, he makes his money in subprime car loans, which charge exorbitant interest rates. So to him, a low fee might in fact be 10%, which would, I think, comport with the speculation that the $185 million promissory note was in fact from Trump. But no clarification of that in here, but allusions to it, which is what makes this article so interesting. Hankey, to return to the article, said he now feels Knight did not charge Trump enough because of New York Attorney General Letitia James' subsequent scrutiny of the bond, as well as the media attention around it. Yeah, well, everything Trump touches dies, he should have known. We thought it would be an easy procedure that wouldn't involve other legal problems, and it's not turning out that way. We probably didn't charge enough, Hankey said in an interview. That's actually quite frank. We have been getting a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. Maybe that's part of the reason he had trouble with other insurance companies. Yeah, Hankey said, adding that despite the issues, he did not regret providing the bond, except that he didn't provide the bond. So there wasn't anything to regret. Trump posted the $175 million bond on April 1st. No, he didn't. As he appeals a $454 million fraud judgment against him for overstating his net worth and the value of his real estate to dupe banks and insurers, red light flashing here, in a case brought by James. On Thursday, James's office questioned the $175 million bond, asking that Knight provide proof that it has enough assets to pay if Trump's appeal fails. A New York judge will hold a hearing on the matter on April 22nd. That's Engeron. Hankey, whose net worth is pegged by Forbes at $7.4 billion, said he was taken aback by James's questioning the bond. I'm surprised they're coming down harder on our bond or looking for reasons to cause issues with our instrument, he said, except, as we pointed out, why wouldn't you question it? The bond says it's not a bond. Right in it. Hankey, who runs a group of businesses, including a provider of subprime automotive loans that has been reprimanded by regulators, fined in fact, for predatory behavior involving customers, said Trump offered collateral for the $175 million in cash. He said the cash is held at a brokerage firm and pledged to Knight, and that Knight can access it if needed. So they're definitely holding a note directed to them by Trump. You'll see why I say it that way in just a second. Whether or not it's in the value of $175 million or $185 million or something in between, or has no set cash value because it's based on some garbage, who knows? Even he doesn't know or is unwilling to say. Now, Hankey said the cash is held at a brokerage firm, pledged to Knight, and Knight can access it if needed. I don't know if it came from Donald Trump or from Donald Trump and supporters, Hankey said of the cash Trump is said here to have provided for collateral, except he didn't provide it. He said, it's in a bank account. It's in Canada. You wouldn't know it, but there's an account, and I'll totally let you have access to it if you need it. Well, he says it's pledged to Knight. Is it? I don't know. Yes, no, maybe so. No one's seen the paperwork on that, for one thing. So it may or may not exist. And, of course, Trump may or may not be lying about the access he's willing to give Knight to get it. And Knight might be willing to cover that up as well and lie as a result. Hankey said he first approached Trump's representatives, as ProPublica told us, to discuss how he could help Trump with the bond before the former president managed to get it reduced on appeal from $454 million to $175 million. Trump would have had to come up with a lot of collateral, or somebody else would, Hankey said. Hankey said he understood from Trump's representatives that Trump did not have $454 million in cash. Trump last month said in a post on his social media platform that he had, quote, almost $500 million in cash. So he said he did have it, but I guess he was lying. In an April 2023 deposition with James, he said he had, quote, substantially in excess of $400 million in cash. A spokesperson for Trump did not respond to a request for comment. And that's actually the end of this Reuters article. But yeah, very interesting and revealing how evasive all of Hankey's own comments are. Of course, it's interesting. I'd love to know what they charge. I know I'd love to know what he thinks is a low fee, but he wouldn't give any specifics. And I guess the reporters at that point just didn't know enough to follow up, and he wasn't going to give answers, even if they did follow up. But important extra developments in all of this, including this idea that, oh yeah, there's some cash somewhere in some account that's pledged tonight. Well, just give it tonight. No, I'm not going to do that. Well, since Knight is willing to do special favors for Trump, none of the usual rules apply, apparently. So there you go. I thought that was kind of an interesting development. Let's see. Running out of time here to read you some other things. There's plenty more. It's going to be a jam-packed Thursday and Friday. But let me add this as a follow-up on one of our long-running stories. Actually, another Reuters piece telling us about this. Let's see. What's this name? Doina? Doina is the first name. And Chaku, maybe. His last name, Chiacu. Okay. Apologies for the pronunciation. And Reuters is an international organization, so occasionally you run into this. But the important part was, this is a follow-up on one of our favorite long-running soap opera stories, just in terms of when are these guys going to get their comeuppance? Republican operatives to pay, maybe, $1.25 million for robocalls threatening black voters, New York prosecutor says. What's the deal here? Who are we talking about? Two conservative operatives who launched a robocall campaign designed to prevent black New York voters, from voting by mail in the 2020 U.S. election will pay $1.25 million in a settlement. New York State Attorney General Letitia James said on Tuesday. She's kind of busy. What's the deal? Jacob Wall and Jack Berkman, remember those two idiots, were found liable by a federal judge in New York in March of 2023 for targeting black voters and sending false and threatening messages intended to discourage voting. Remember, this all happens in 2020. It took 3 years to get them found liable in front of a judge, and it has taken almost or more than a year since. They were found liable in March of 2023. It is only now, April 9th, yesterday, 2024, that we learn how much they will be held liable for paying. Whether they'll ever pay it or not, stay tuned for another 16 years. Wall and Berkman orchestrated a depraved and disinformation-ridden campaign to intimidate black voters in an attempt to sway the election in favor of their preferred candidate, James said in a statement. During the summer of 2020, automated phone calls claimed that mail-in voting would allow the voter to be tracked for outstanding warrants, credit card debt, and mandatory vaccines, James said. The National Coalition of Black Civic Participation, which was a plaintiff in the lawsuit, was forced to redirect considerable resources to address the false claims made in the call, James said. During the 2020 presidential campaign that he lost to Democrat Joe Biden, Republican President Donald Trump, then president anyway, and his allies repeatedly made false claims that mail-in voting would lead to fraud. Well, it would lead to their fraud anyway. Trump, who is challenging Biden on the November 5th presidential election, in case you didn't know, has continued to repeat the claims. The 2020 robocall was also distributed in Cleveland, Ohio, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Chicago, the Pennsylvania cities of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. That's an interesting way of putting it. Detroit and Arlington, Virginia, according to a filing in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. A New York lawyer for Berkman and Wall, David Schwartz, said his clients were pleased to have a settlement and put this case behind them so they can focus on their families and careers. What careers? They're criminals. Berkman, a Washington lawyer and Republican operative, was stripped of his law license in March. That was good to hear. By the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. He and Wohl pleaded guilty in October of 2022. Once again, just showing you how long these procedures can take, to telecommunications fraud in Ohio after using robocalls to intimidate people from voting by mail during the 2020 presidential election. They were sentenced to 2 years of probation, each fined $2,500 and ordered to do 500 hours of community service. So Ohio not exactly holding these two to account. In June of 23, the Federal Communications Commission fined Berkman and Wohl $5.1 million for making more than 1,100 unlawful robocalls in August and September of 2020. Berkman is perhaps best known for keeping the 2016 killing of DNC staffer Seth Rich in Washington in the news. Rich's murder became fodder for conspiracy theory in conservative media, and though Washington police have said his slaying was part of a robbery gone wrong. All right, so he's as dirty as they come. Ohio didn't feel like taking him to account, but years and years later, as it turns out, among other things, Letitia James now has a claim against him for $1.25 million. How did they collect? I don't know. Did they ever pay the FCC $5.1 million? Probably not. Did they ever serve their probation? I don't know. These two guys should be chucked out of a helicopter at some point, but, we don't do that in this exceptional country. I'll tell you what we do in this exceptional country. We listen to Justice Putnam and the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next, right here on Networks Radio.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Let's see what's on tap here. Aileen Cannon back in the news for justice as well. She overturned her own prior order because she's such an organized thinker, but this time blamed Jack Smith for her own lack of knowledge about the law. Yeah, there's a lot to catch up on, and we'll get to analyzing that as time goes on, but justice, we'll get to it first, next.